What happens when an American war hero, former Navy SEAL, and state governor looks at his own country and decides Canada offers a better future? The answer is unfolding in Minnesota right now, and it changes everything we thought we knew about North American politics. Breaking tonight, the unthinkable just became speakable. An American state governor didn't just criticize Washington, he proposed abandoning it entirely. The northern border just got complicated. Jesse Ventura floated the idea of Minnesota seceding from the United States and joining Canada instead. Most people would laugh that off as political theater, but here's the thing. Canadians aren't laughing. They're paying very close attention. For over 2 centuries, American federalism seemed unshakable. State complaints stayed rhetorical. No serious politician talked about actually leaving the Union for another country. Until now. Minneapolis, January 25th, 2026. Speaking on the Spin Sisters podcast, former Minnesota Governor Jesse "The Body" Ventura made a statement that stopped Ottawa cold. Since Trump dislikes Minnesota so bad and we're so out of control, let's join Canada. Instead of Canada becoming the 51st state of America, I'd like to see Minnesota, all of us, become Canadians. Translation: a former American governor just told Washington that Canadian sovereignty and stability look more appealing than American chaos. And what happened next reveals exactly why Canada's reputation for respect, order, and constitutional governance is becoming the North Star for Americans exhausted by federal overreach. Dear viewers, between January 7th and January 25th, 2026, something extraordinary happened in American-Canadian relationships. First, Renée Good was killed by an ICE agent during protests. Then, 17 days later, Alex Pretti became the second American citizen shot dead by federal agents in Minneapolis. Washington pushed too hard. Minneapolis said enough. And Canada, stable, professional Canada, became the alternative that American state leaders started mentioning publicly for the first time in modern history. This isn't just about one frustrated former governor. This is about the fundamental collapse of American federal credibility and the rise of Canadian constitutional stability as an actual alternative model. When a decorated Navy SEAL, professional wrestling Hall of Famer, and former state executive starts publicly floating Canadian citizenship, you're not watching political theater. You're watching the early stages of a North American realignment. Let's understand what drove Ventura to this moment, because the timeline matters tremendously. January 7th, 2026. Renée Good became the first American citizen killed by ICE agents during protests in Minneapolis. The outrage was immediate, but Washington didn't retreat. January 24th, 2026, 17 days later, ICU nurse Alex Pretti was fatally shot by Border Patrol agents in Minneapolis. Not at a border checkpoint, not during a chase. In the heart of an American city, a second healthcare worker was killed by federal agents operating with lethal authority in domestic territory. 2 American citizens, 2 fatal shootings, 17 days apart, same city, same federal operation. Ventura didn't mince words. He called the deployment of federal agents to American cities proof that the nation was turning into a third world country. A former governor and military veteran saying that about his own country. Think about that language. A former governor, a military veteran, a man who swore an oath to defend the Constitution, is comparing his own country to failed states with no rule of law. This isn't partisan frustration. This is fundamental disillusionment with the American federal system itself. And what was Washington's response to Minnesota's grief and anger? More insults, more threats, more rhetoric about states being out of control that need federal discipline. Trump's pattern was consistent throughout January. Insult Canadian sovereignty. Call the Prime Minister a governor. Suggest Canada should become the 51st state. Claim Canada only lives because of the United States. Then turn around and deploy lethal federal force in American cities while calling state governments incompetent. Ventura saw the contradiction immediately. It's obvious Trump don't want us. It's obvious that he's ready to fracture the whole country for his own folly. Or if they don't want us, I'm sure Canada would be happy to take us. Why does Ventura's proposal actually make sense on paper? Start with geography. Minnesota and Canada share a 547-mile border. The state has nearly 12,000 lakes, and Minnesotans have been driving north for generations. Fishing trips, family vacations, business connections. The cultural ties run deep, so do the economic ones. Minnesota's healthcare philosophy looks more like Canada's universal system than America's private insurance chaos. Environmental policies, education standards, social values. Minnesota consistently aligns closer to Canadian norms than to most other American states. Ventura even joked about the practical implications. Think of what a mess it'll be when they have to cross an international border to come up here fishing. But beneath the humor lies serious strategic thinking. Minnesota's economy is already integrated with Canadian markets. The state's healthcare systems share more philosophical alignment with Canadian universal coverage than American private insurance chaos. Minnesota's environmental values, education standards, and social policies consistently rank closer to Canadian norms than to Southern or Western American states. What Ventura is proposing isn't a radical departure. It's formalizing relationships that already exist while escaping federal dysfunction that serves no Minnesota interest. From Ottawa's perspective, this moment represents something unprecedented. For decades, American politicians casually suggested Canada should join the United States. The insults were routine. The assumption of American superiority was constant. Now, an American state governor is suggesting the reverse. And the calculation behind that suggestion is brutally clear. Canada offers constitutional stability. America offers constitutional crisis. Canada offers healthcare security. America offers medical bankruptcy. Canada offers respected international standing. America offers global isolation and trade wars. Canada offers federal respect for provincial autonomy. America offers federal agents in city streets. Ventura isn't proposing Minnesota join a failing state. He's proposing Minnesota join a country that figured out federalism, healthcare, and international relationships while America descended into chaos. This isn't happening in isolation. Across northern American states, frustration with Washington is reaching breaking points. Across northern states, governors are defying federal directives outright. Attorneys general keep filing constitutional challenges. The numbers are off the charts compared to previous administrations. State legislatures are writing laws specifically designed to contradict Washington's policies. But Ventura went further. He didn't just resist federal authority, he proposed an alternative. And that alternative is Canada. I think someone seriously should contact Canada and ask them if they're open to this, Ventura said. Read that again, carefully. A former American governor just suggested an American state should open diplomatic channels with a foreign government to explore leaving the Union. When did you last hear a politician of Ventura's stature say something like that out loud? When did Canadian citizenship become the preferred option for someone who actually governed an American state? This is new territory. And it's driven entirely by American federal dysfunction, making Canadian constitutional stability look increasingly attractive. Ottawa faces a delicate situation. On one hand, Canadian officials would never openly encourage American state secession. The diplomatic complications would be catastrophic. The precedent would be dangerous. On the other hand, Canada cannot ignore what Ventura's statement represents. An American state with nearly 6 million people, significant economic output, and deep cultural ties to Canada is publicly questioning whether American citizenship serves its interests. The smart Canadian response is exactly what Ottawa has been doing for months. Don't encourage. Don't discourage. Just keep demonstrating that Canadian governance works, Canadian healthcare functions, Canadian federal-provincial relationships remain respectful, and Canadian international standing continues rising while American credibility collapses. Let Minnesota watch. Let Wisconsin watch. Let Michigan watch. Let every Northern American state with deep Canadian ties watch what happens when a country prioritizes stability over chaos, healthcare over bankruptcy, and constitutional order over federal intimidation. Canada doesn't need to recruit American states. American federal dysfunction is doing the recruiting for us. There's something else worth noting. Jesse Ventura isn't a typical politician. He's a former Navy SEAL, a professional wrestling Hall of Famer, a straight-talking populist who won the Minnesota governorship as an independent against both major parties. When someone like Ventura starts talking seriously about joining Canada, he's not representing elite opinion or partisan positioning. He's representing frustrated regular Americans who see Canadian stability and ask themselves a simple question: why can't we have that? Ventura's podcast appearance wasn't a carefully calculated political move. It was genuine frustration erupting into a radical proposal that suddenly doesn't sound so radical to millions of Americans watching federal agents operate in their cities, while healthcare bankruptcies continue and international respect evaporates. Here's what happens next. Will Minnesota actually secede? Of course not, at least not immediately, but that misses the point entirely. The conversation itself has fundamentally changed. 5 years ago, if you suggested an American state might be better off joining Canada, people would have dismissed you as delusional. Today, a former governor says it on a podcast, and the reaction isn't laughter. It's serious consideration. Canadian officials are watching. Minnesota citizens are watching. And across every Northern American state with economic ties to Canada, political leaders are calculating what might be possible if federal dysfunction continues its current trajectory. Canada didn't create the situation. American federal overreach, healthcare failure, and international isolation created it. Canada just kept governing competently, respecting provincial autonomy, maintaining universal healthcare, and building international partnerships, while America descended into chaos. Now, Americans are noticing, and some are asking if Canadian citizenship might serve their interests better than American citizenship. That's not a question anyone expected to hear from a former American governor, but it's the question Jesse Ventura just asked publicly, and the fact that he asked it changes everything about how we understand North American political possibilities. The 547-mile border between Minnesota and Canada isn't just a geographic line anymore. It's becoming the boundary between two fundamentally different models of governance. And for the first time in modern history, Americans are looking north and wondering if the grass really is greener. Spoiler alert. It might be. And Canada didn't have to do anything except keep being Canada, while America figured out how to fracture itself from within. If you're watching from Minnesota tonight, welcome to the conversation. If you're watching from anywhere else in Northern America, start asking yourself the same questions Ventura is asking, because the North American future might look very different than anyone expected just 6 months ago. In Canada, Canada's ready. We've been ready. We just never expected Americans would start asking to join us instead of the other way around. That's the Jesse Ventura story. That's the Minnesota moment. And that's why everything you thought you knew about North American politics just changed.